Hello, hello, hello. I've just been told by Jenny, who's producing this event, that I had to shut up and get back on stage, so that's exactly what I've done. We're on the home straight now. We have our third and final postcard from the future coming up now. And as I said before the break, Tim from NESTA is going to be talking about new financial models, the new ways that we're going to be doing business together, what those relationships that underpin that business might look like, who's involved, who isn't involved. I've had a quick chat about what he's going to say, and I think it will be really provoking, which is exactly what we want at this point in the day. I would say, actually, we were just talking about, it's great when you hear the provocation, they are there to provoke. So fantastic to kind of bring you in. Do put your hand up if there's something that you're really itching to say because you either really agree with it, you've got something else to put into the mix, or if in fact you disagree with it. That's kind of why we're here, to kind of hear from each other. So do feel that you can do that. But anyway, I'm going to ask Tim to come to the stage now for our final postcard from the future. If you can put your hands together for Tim from NESTA. Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for staying around. Can you hear me okay on the mic? Can I get a nod if the mic's working? Yes, Jenny, is that all good? Fine, brilliant. Guys, well done for staying through to this stage. It's the hottest day since 2006, just in case you're in any doubt. So well done. I hope we're going to have a really interesting discussion together through this next bit. And as Julia said, I've been asked to think about a postcard in the future, looking at, I suppose, at some of the stuff we look at NESTA. And the postcard, when we come to it, it'll come towards the end of the presentation, actually, because what I want to do is sort of throw out a challenge, because I think there's something interesting that people in this room might be able to do next. And in some ways, that postcard may be something that we create together, and I might allude to. But essentially what I'm going to do is set it out as a challenge, really, and say, I think there's something amazing that could come next. Now, it may be true, it may be untrue, and so as you react back, you can look at that and say, that's total nonsense, or there may be some truth in it. But we'll come to that towards the end of the presentation. I wanted to start just by explaining, last night we did a big launch event for a whole load of stuff we're sharing around some experiments we've done in the space between technology and the arts. And in your packs, the team have very kindly put the main magazine which we publish. This is hot off the press. It arrived in our office at 5 o'clock last night, and we managed to get a whole load over and put into your bags. But that's the magazine. Do read it through. It's right across the arts sector, but we've done, I think, some very interesting collaborations between technology companies and arts organisations, and some of the learnings are in that print publication. We also have made a whole load of stuff available for download as of last night and this morning, and we have done a guide dedicated to what we think we're learning about new business models, and particularly around digital distribution. And that's the bit that I'm going to focus on in the stuff I'm chatting through, is what I think some of the opportunities are around digital distribution. So that guide is available to download. We've also collated everything we've learned across these 52 projects. It's a £7 million fund. It's a big amount of work, and we have managed to create one toolkit which will help anyone who's thinking about doing digital content or services. When I've done that in the past in the arts sector, there's never been a resource that I can check against and say, oh yeah, how do I define who my audience is, or how do I do this, or how do I do that? And so I felt it was really important for the arts sector to have a toolkit. So that toolkit is available to download as well, and you can do all of that at artsdigitalrnd.org.uk. We're got a whole load of events happening and training courses, and you can keep up to date on all of that at Digital R&D or hashtag ArtsDigital. And I wanted to start this morning. Unfortunately, I was asked to do a document that has to be in for tomorrow morning. So what I've been doing, and since 10:10, is in Elephant and Castle, watching the whole of the live stream of this in the background while I wrote that document. I've been eating my own dog food in terms of the stuff I'm going to come on to. And a few things really caught my attention. It's been an amazing day so far, and huge credit and well done and brilliantness really to the Hub for doing this, because it is brilliant. And one of the things that caught my attention, and I whacked this together very quickly as I was sitting in my flat in Elephant and Castle, was there was a line around actually what we're doing in terms of this generating new revenue and looking at business models. There was a really interesting line about actually what we're doing when we're thinking about this is just thinking about competing for people's leisure income, the money that they'll be spending on leisure. And I wanted to really go back to basics, because the risk is with this, you immediately get into the tech and you start sort of over-confusing it. In the end, this sort of challenge we've got around new business models is about accessing the money that people have that they spend on, additional leisure activity. And I thought this in no way accounts for my entire expenditure. But I've seen that really grow and develop over the last couple of years. So there's all the British stuff that I end up paying, British Gas, British Telecom, the license fee and all of that, and all of that goes out. And then for quite a long time I've been doing a whole load of sort of arts membership stuff, and that's that bit going in. And then there's a whole load of new stuff which is emerging, and at some point, terrifying thing about doing this is you have to add it all up at some point. I'll add all this up at some point as I kind of sign up for all of these things. I'm a marketer's best dream, because it all feels like the best thing in the world when it comes through. But Composed is the new amazing streaming service from Classic FM. It's brilliant. I love that, and partly out of professional need, I go through all of this stuff. But we're adding all of this stuff up, and I thought what was interesting for this morning is this is taking all of that, that leisure income, that percentage you've got aside. And I suppose one of the challenges, I think ahead is we are definitely moving into this kind of world. In some of the things that are reshaping the thinking of where the BBC might be heading, the BBC, might be looking at that kind of hybrid model of some of this, merge with, top up on terms of license fee. And I just think, without making it feel really, really basic to begin with, I think coming back from this model and thinking what we are in the end doing is competing for this kind of space. And what can we do, and what are the opportunities, and particularly what is digital technology allowing us and opening up for us to be able to do that? And there are a few of the projects that we've been working on in this Digital R&D Fund for the Arts, which I think are useful into this. The first I wanted to just mention and tell you about was, for those of you familiar with live streaming of arts events into cinema, so NT Live, Royal Opera House, etc., this is a much lower spec version of that NT Live type experience. So this is Miracle Theatre down in the southwest of England doing NT Live style capture of their stuff, but at an absolute fraction of the kind of production costs that the National Theatre are spending on doing all of their stuff. And what Miracle Theatre have been doing is capturing all of their main stage shows, filming them live, putting them on demand afterwards, and essentially generating, great revenue out of productions which they'd already done. All the money goes into doing that production, but they've done a small filming layer on top of that, a really intelligent distribution piece on it. And of course, they leverage, very good margin against what was the main production. They're a touring theatre company in the southwest. The first night they did something in the cinema of this, they did about 6,000 ticket sales to cinemas, mostly around the southwest. That's more than they will do in their entire touring season of one show. And again, we funded this, and I think this is a really interesting space. This is, a production level that's much less than National Theatre. Another project which this Digital R&D Fund has funded is an independent film distribution channel, We Are Colony. They are releasing not only the film, but monetising a huge amount of the backstory of that film. So annotated scripts, storyboards, extra material, etc. They're making more revenue out of all of that extra material and the backstory and all the bits they're filling. They're making more revenue than they are from the main film simply on its own. And again, what's this? And again, this morning, for those who've been at all the sessions, you'll have seen the stuff around, I thought there was interesting in that first provocation piece this morning, around what does a digital ticket look like that buys you access to a whole production process, right through from conception through to live event to after, and what parts of those process can you monetize? And this project is starting to get around how you can monetize a much bigger part of an independent film. And I think, again, for us gathered today, that's useful as well. So give me one example of one thing I'd love to see in that. My favourite actor is Anthony Sher. My favourite play is King Lear. Next year, to celebrate Shakespeare's birthday in Stratford-upon-Avon, Anthony Sher is going to be playing King Lear. It's the role he's always wanted to play for. It's his defining role of his life. There is nothing that will be too much for the Royal Shakespeare Company to give me on that whole process. I mean, I can't wait, of course, to go up to Stratford to see it. But I'm excited about it now. Is my experience going to be limited to 2 hours? Oh, well, it's a 3-hour play. Am I going to experience limited to 3 hours in Stratford on that? There's a whole process that I'd be perfectly happy to be given quite a lot of my leisure dollar against to go and see. So I would love to see him on the first day of rehearsals. I'd love to see the read-through. I'd love to see him approaching the role. I'd love to see the tech run. I mean, you see what I mean? I think there's a really interesting story about that. Who knew? Hands up in the air if you're a fan of the genre, the classic genre, aliens and Nazis. Who knew? It's a massive subgenre. I was recently out in Helsinki and I met an extraordinary film company who are now on their second film that is absolutely targeted at the genre of aliens and Nazis. And I suspect most of you in the room are, and so I can give you details of the film later. So Iron Sky raised €8 million through crowdfunding to be able to make the film. It's a very you can imagine it's a very dedicated, quiet boys in their rooms market, but they absolutely understand it. Okay, €8 million to make it. They have about 200,000 people around the world who are connected into this whole film process. Yeah. Who are following what they're doing, members of the film, feel like the film is theirs. 200,000 people in 34 countries. They have a whole ranking scale of ways you can get involved. But to that 200,000 people, they get them to pay for the film before it's made and be able to show it to them ahead of it. With that same group of people, pay to be extras. The same group of people buy the costumes at the end of the film. And then are putting money forward saying we now want the next version of that. It's a really, really interesting model. This group understand that 200,000 people better than anyone I've ever seen. I've done a lot of art stuff, I've done a lot of TV stuff. This group absolutely understand that audience. I think it's really interesting. Iron Sky, do go and have a look at it. So this is the filming, the extras, hundreds and hundreds of extras, all paying to be in this. It was the largest filming night ever in Helsinki. They took it over, turned it into New York City. Hundreds of extras paying to be part of that. It's extraordinary. And then paying to watch the film. I mean, it's amazing, I think. Very quickly then, now let me get into what I think is an opportunity ahead. One of the projects I worked on a few years ago was a live broadcast event from the British Museum that took an exhibition and turned it into a live cinema event. We broadcast that to cinemas, to about 200 cinemas around the UK. On that night, 50,000 people came to see it. They paid £11 a head on average to see it. So we immediately covered our production costs just from that group. In the next week, 40,000 people came to see it on Encore as recorded. It then went to 32 countries around the world on international distribution. In the US, one cinema group put it in 400 cinemas in one go. 50,000 people, though, allowed us to make it's exactly the same quality you'd have spent on BBC One. It's about £250,000 of production for a 90-minute show, and 50,000 people paying £11 allowed you to see it. Now, it's what we used to call narrowcasting. If you go to a broadcaster and say, fantastic news, I've got 50,000 people who've watched it, you'd be fired. I mean, it's a meaningless number for a broadcaster. But it's a really interesting number thinking around this narrowcasting world. And I just came and thought, there's not one thing we did differently from an hour that we'd have done on BBC One, and I could pay for that with 50,000 people. And that has never left me, really, and this is where I'm coming onto the provocation. So what we did, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but we marketed it through social. We created a whole 24-hour campaign beforehand. We had no money to market it traditionally. Every single thing we did was done almost for free using social. So we ran a campaign. So here I'm coming on to essentially the provocation and the thing that I want to sort of essentially hand back to you, and perhaps we'll pick up as a panel. Berlin Philharmonic are doing amazing numbers on creating a digital concert hall that allows people to watch live and recorded music in a fantastic concert hall type experience entirely lived online. These people paying monthly membership fees. They are making proper money out of this. It's a proper part of their business. I think it's extraordinary. Wigmore Hall recently announced that they, in their refurbishment, they kitted the whole place out to be able to do live streaming of everything they do. So, you know, all of the infrastructure behind all the walls to enable them to do it. Now, Wigmore Hall has yet to start taking that for a walk in terms of what it means. But, you know, take what Berlin Philharmonic are doing, take this onto the Wigmore Hall. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the launch of the new plan for the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. The Riverside Studio in Hammersmith has been built or is being built from the ground up as both a live performance venue but a live online broadcast studio. So what they're hoping to do is not only do work that can go at the same time that they have a live audience, simultaneously go to a whole load of networks around the world, but they're hoping to pick up work from people who want to be doing it. It's somewhere between a live performance space and a TV studio. The whole of the business model, the whole plan is being built around that as an idea. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to a big launch event with loads of people from the Arts Council to hear what that actually means. But I think it's really interesting. And what I really want to throw out to you is, I think there's something interesting to happen that hasn't happened yet in this space. So we take everything we see there around narrowcasting and these venues and some of the business models that are working, even in small scale, some of the things that are happening. I think there's a really interesting space opening up between television and social and these live cultural events and these digital memberships to a dedicated fan base audience that I don't think anyone is doing. The Berlin Philharmonic is very similar to how you just see the proms. National Theatre live events are very much just like you'd watch on BBC Two. I don't think it's what the audience are going to be wanting over the next few years. I think they're going to be wanting something totally different. These guys are really interesting. Flux Broadcast. They're the only people who talk in the way that I think this is happening. So Flux Broadcast do big IP streaming events of non-traditional broadcast activity. Last night they were doing the premiere of Magic Mike they do a lot of the film premiere stuff. I've just called them and said, guys, what are your numbers? At peak, 7:30 last night, they were doing 1.5 million simultaneous views of the red carpet of Magic Mike. They do all of London Fashion Week, they do all the Topshop live stuff, they're just about to start doing Burberry. And what they're really good at doing is mixing second screen experience with live television. The 1.5 million streams were almost entirely done directly into Facebook. So they're a trusted supplier into Twitter, into Facebook. All of those live streams, almost exclusively, were going into live social platforms. That's where they're picking up almost all of those 1.5 million. So they're the only people who I think really understand doing live broadcast into social platforms. And ultimately, that's where I think it's going. But I haven't ever seen it being done with music. There is not an example that I can put up on the screen that really captures that new world between social platforms and where people are at. What we would have once thought of as live broadcast activity. And the old models, I don't think, are good enough. I think there's a new thing to be invented. I think there's a big opportunity for live music. Periscope, where it is at the moment, isn't it, but I think it's really interesting in what they're doing. At the moment, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm waking up and watching a guy who goes around Rome, and every morning at 6 o'clock, he takes you on a guided tour of a different site in Rome. It's brilliant. So he's actually a guy I know who's an amazing British archaeologist who's living out in Rome. And on his way through to work, he says, and now we're going to stop in this church, and he takes you around and does a guided tour every morning at 6 o'clock. And there's a whole gang of us who are now all waking up and doing that in bed. I live on my own. So it's not, of course, it, but there's something really interesting in watching that. And I keep on looking at that and looking at these other things that we've seen on screen and thinking, I think there's a new thing, and it's a big opportunity for live music, but I don't think I've seen it. And then I'll end by saying, yes, with Oculus Rift, I think as well. Periscope isn't it. Oculus Rift at the moment isn't it. But with Oculus Rift, with Samsung, the most downloaded VR piece of content from the Samsung VR app is Perfect Beach, which is not a game, it's a 30-minute beach experience. It's a chill-out experience. Yeah, 30-minute wander around. So if you need to take half an hour out, there is this beautiful, and it is mind-blowing, it is the most downloaded piece of VR content from the Samsung store. Now, what does that mean for those in the room here who are music practitioners? I think there's an interesting space. When Facebook talked a few weeks ago about the 3 big priorities for the next 5 years, VR was one of the 3. They are only going to focus on 3 things. They said, and I've no idea what it means, to be honest, they said they want to reinvent the social experience as a VR experience. And I don't know what that means. But if we're not thinking about that, I think we're probably missing an opportunity and something interesting that can be created. So the provocation is really back to say, at NESTA, we're really interested in these kind of ideas. If there was any kind of possibility, I'd love to think of working with someone who might be able to help think about it. But I think as we break free from the traditional world of broadcast and the traditional world of publishing, I think there's opportunities around this that I think it would be worth someone exploring, and I think there's an opportunity there. It could, of course, also be madness. We'll pick that up in the panel. Thank you for your attention very much.